Hey everybody, welcome back to Race of History. Today we're going to do the Sabaton history for the last battle. I did the song yesterday. If you haven't seen it yet, I'll put the link to it somewhere up at the top. Um, this is a really kind of weird, interesting story. I don't know a ton about it. I've come across it in some World War II, either video or book, but I don't know just a ton about it other than it was a really strange scenario, and that's really it, right? That it's a strange scenario because you have German soldiers of the Wehrmacht and US soldiers fighting against other German soldiers from the Waffen SS. So um, that's about all I know about it that I can think of off the top of my head. So I'm interested to see kind of what this whole thing is about. So let's get into it.
Wait. In World War II, Germans and Americans fighting together?
Oh, yeah.
During the beginning of the end for the Third Reich in World War II, the Allies planned the invasion of the German homeland. Rumors had long circulated about an impregnable Alpine fortress stretching all over the northwestern part of Austria, into which Hitler and his loyal followers would retreat if the war ever came to the Reich itself. The Allies were concerned about deep underground bunkers blasted into the high mountains which could stockpile guns and supplies. Such a fortress could prolong the war for several months. Most of their fears were, of course, unfounded. But deep within northern Tyrol, there actually stood such an old fortress. Schloss Itter had been a medieval castle. Its foundations can be traced back to the 13th century. Over the centuries, the castle had fallen into ruin until it was rebuilt in the 19th century. In 1943, it had been seized by the SS and incorporated into the Dachau concentration camp system. The old fairy tale-like castle became a prison for high-profile prisoners. Some of France's most influential politicians and generals like Edouard Daladier, Maurice Gamelin, Michel Clemenceau, and Paul Reynaud were even held there. By the end of April 1945, the noose was tightening.
Yeah, I can't imagine Clemenceau was very highly thought of by the Germans who were around for the end of World War One, right? I'm sure he wasn't. But that's actually really interesting that they use an old castle to house essentially political prisoners. I mean, I guess they kind of were housing prisoners wherever they could. When you're when you're taking that many prisoners, even just from the general population, you kind of start running out of space pretty quickly.
Around the Germans. The Red Army marched deep into Hungary from the east. German forces had surrendered in Italy to the south, and the Western Allies advanced towards Tyrol from the west. What was left of the shattered remnants of the German army flooded back into Austria, and Tyrol grew full of the last die-hard Wehrmacht and Waffen SS troops, whose mere presence would keep many other soldiers from surrendering. But there was also another group there that is often overlooked: the Austrian resistance. After the Anschluss in 1938, there had always been a number of native Austrians who stood against the Nazis. For many years, they could only offer passive and nonviolent opposition. But with the Allies just a few miles away, they could finally act. They provided valuable intelligence about the German defenses and directed the army spearheads through the Inn River Valley. But
This is actually one of the more interesting parts about the whole push by the Allies, and sort of on the east with the Soviets too, but mostly in the west with the Allies, is you had resistance groups in all of these countries, all of these different countries that the Germans had taken over time. You have these resistance pockets within each one, even if the groups themselves don't actually work together. You see this a lot with the French resistance, where there's not a ton of coordination between certain groups, but they become extremely valuable and helpful once the actual invasion in the West starts. And they all prove their worth many, many times over, if nothing else, just because of the intelligence they give. Although, in a lot of cases, they do a lot more than give intelligence. They're, marking things for bombing. They're blowing up railways or, sabotaging factories or whatever. The resistance groups do a ton of stuff throughout the war, but they are worth their weight in gold just from the intelligence they're able to give once the actual Allied invasion starts.
But their most important goal was to protect the Austrian citizens from bloody reprisals by the SS. Already people were hanging white flags and Austrian flags out from their windows, and the SS did not hesitate to open fire on these defeatists. The mood inside Castle Itter was dark. The French VIPs, very important prisoners, feared that the SS guards would rather execute them than release them to the Allies. But then on May the 4th, after the last commander of Dachau shot himself in his quarters and the SS officer in charge took that as his cue to disappear, the castle was suddenly empty. Renaud and Clemenceau took a stroll out of the castle gates and into Itter village, but quickly turned around. The roads were still full of patrolling SS troops, setting up roadblocks and machine gun posts. Back in the castle, the French VIPs discussed their situation. It was clear that they were still trapped, and that it probably wouldn't be long until the SS reminded itself of their existence. So they came up with a plan. First, they would sew together a French tricolor banner and hang it from the inner walls to alert Allied aircraft to their presence. Next, they would get in contact with a rather unlikely member of the Austrian underground resistance. SS Captain Kurt Siegfried Schrader could have played the stereotypical Nazi villain in a Tarantino movie. Highly decorated, he had served as a bodyguard in Hitler's headquarters. After being badly wounded in desperate fighting in France, he broke with the Fuhrer and defected to the resistance. Schrader promised to help, but he knew that his authority could only buy them some time. If any higher-ups in the SS decided to storm the keep and kill everyone inside, his rank could not prevent it. All agreed that only the quick arrival of the U.S. Army would save their lives.
What a bizarre situation. So imagine you're one of these French prisoners who is no longer a prisoner of, as small of a space, but still you're not able to get out. You're not able to escape or go anywhere or do anything. You're in this castle. If you leave, chances are you're going to be killed. And if you aren't killed, then you're at least going to alert the rest of the Germans and SS around of the presence of the prisoners in the castle, right? So what do? Like, what's the move? It's very interesting that they have somebody that they can reach out to that's from the other side, and it's interesting that that person's willing to use his rank, because you have to imagine if a higher rank shows up, he's going to be killed for that. I mean, surely, right? But he's willing to use his rank to try to protect them, but even then, you're really only getting a short amount of time. So what do? Do you start barricading stuff? Do you try to find weapons? Do you just hope that the U.S. gets there in time? Like, what's the move? That's kind of a bizarre situation to be in.
Just around the corner, 1945, the furious rains had its end. Jenny at the gates, as the SS open fire. There's no time to waste, the final battle's begun.
They sent out the Czech cook to establish contact, but halfway to the American lines, in the town of Vergo, he was nearly caught by a patrol, but being pulled into a nearby house saved his life. His savior was Major Joseph Gangl. Gangl was a career soldier in the Wehrmacht since 1935. From the war's beginning to Stalingrad, Normandy, and Bastogne, Gangl had seen everything, but he too had returned a disillusioned man, and like Schrader, chose to betray his oath to the Nazis. Now, we don't quite know how such decorated soldiers gained the trust of the resistance, but at the moment, it mattered little. Gangel and the Czech cook set out to find the Americans. Driving just a few miles cross country, they suddenly spotted several Sherman tanks in a small village. Slamming on the brakes, Gangel, still wearing his uniform, got out, hands in the air. He was led to the nearest U.S. officer, Captain John Kerry Lee. After listening to their story, Lee radioed headquarters, and after a quick exchange, the 27-year-old former college football star from New York enthusiastically declared they were going on a rescue mission. Lee's unit was part of the 12th Armored Division, which now, after Hitler's death, was not quite as enthusiastic as their captain to risk their lives fighting die-hard Nazis in the final hours of the European war. Lee, however, was determined and set off with his ad hoc task force of 7 Shermans. His own tank, the Besotten Jenny, took the lead. At the next river, however, only 4 of his tanks were able to cross a wooden bridge before it gave way. His force reduced, the column rumbled on. Arriving in Würgel, they were warmly received by the Austrian resistance and joined by a group of German soldiers loyal to Gangel. Although the Waffen SS had left Würgel, Lee left 2 of his...
What? The situation just gets stranger and stranger. Gangel, I don't know enough about it to know what exactly he became so disillusioned to, although I'd imagine fighting in all of the places he fought had to, I don't know if anybody could make it through there, mentally unscathed. But not only does he help, does he join, he has soldiers loyal to him that also join. Like, what a bizarre situation and circumstance that is. So, no fighting has happened. You have this, these holdouts on the German side that nobody's really that enthusiastic to fight. You have these prisoners that are, sort of behind enemy lines here. And you have this weird concoction of a handful of American troops, a German that is super high ranking and has fought everywhere, and then guys loyal to him. Like, you have to imagine that none of these people trust each other very much, right? Like, everybody has to be worried every time they hear footsteps behind them that they're about to get shot in the back.
Tanks behind to support the resistance in case they came back. The 2 remaining Shermans, Besotten Jenny and Boschbuster, moved on with the Germans in tow. Close to Itter village, they had to cross another bridge, which had already been wired with explosives. Lee ordered Boschbuster to stay behind and guard their only route back. Without further incident, Besotten Jenny and around a dozen American and German soldiers arrived at the castle gates. While the men went inside, Lee ordered Besotten Jenny to turn around to block the entrance. In the castle, perhaps one of the most unlikely scenes of the war took place. An American Army captain, a Waffen SS officer, and a German Army major made a plan to defend French hostages from loyal Nazis in a medieval Austrian castle.
This doesn't make any damn sense. Seriously, this doesn't make any damn sense. If somebody made a movie about this, it would be far too unbelievable. Everybody would be like, no, there's no way that would happen. Seriously, this makes no sense at all.
I know. Schrader reported seeing several Waffen SS trucks moving around carrying anti-tank guns. Lee, knowing that American reinforcements were on their way, ordered the French prisoners to seek shelter in the keep while the soldiers took guard at the castle walls. They were only lightly armed with rifles and submachine guns, but the firepower of Besotten Jenny would give them a chance. Lee went to bed, but it would be a short night. At 4 a.m., he awoke to the sound of gunfire. A German MG-42 was firing at the gatehouse, and Jenny's .50 caliber was answering. Tracer rounds were flying through the dark as the men on the western wall suddenly spotted SS men carrying grappling hooks. The SS was clearly looking for a way in, but the fire...
Grappling hooks. Like, they're assaulting a medieval castle with grappling hooks. What is going on? None of this makes any sense, and every step further makes less sense than the step before. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
Fire from the defenders had spoiled their plans so far. Gangle, Schrader, and their castle krauts kept them at bay, firing from the upper floors while the Americans defended the gatehouse. Trust between the Germans and Americans had been shaky at best, but now none of them would survive if the SS got in.
After the downfall, the castle besieged, facing the Nazis awaiting relief. Gangle and Lee and their men set the blizzard free.
Shortly after 8:30, things got real. They spotted a 20mm anti-aircraft cannon and an 88mm gun northwest of the castle, with truckloads of Waffen SS soldiers arriving. The
Yikes.
first 88 shells smashed into the castle, and the whole structure shook. Then a staccato of 20mm shells began blasting small gaps into the walls. Things went from bad to worse. Besotten Jenny rocked violently backwards. Seeing fire spurting from the engine access grills, the crew jumped out of the burning Sherman tank just in time before a second anti-tank shell sealed its fate. With their chances of survival now seriously reduced, the French VIPs took up arms and joined the defenders at the gatehouse. The elderly Reynaud, France's prime minister early in the war, fired his MP-40 through the open window, and Gangle ran over to help. But he didn't get far. The man who had seen the European part of the war from the beginning to its final battle was killed by a sniper. With more 88mm rounds smashing into the castle walls, however, there was no time to mourn him. Waffen SS soldiers were moving up the slopes, pressing home the attack. With the radio
Imagine that you fight every, on every front in all these major battles of the war. You're fighting against literally everybody that Germany fights against. Not only do you fight in it, you live to see another day, you survive all of it, you get here and you get shot by a freaking German. Like, what the heck? You survive, what did they say, Stalingrad or Leningrad earlier? Like, you survive Normandy, and you're here at this incredibly bizarre battle where the Germans have more or less fallen apart, other than this hardcore, group of them. And you're protecting French prisoners with American soldiers, and you get shot by, the whole thing just, it seems a little ironic that he survives all of it, and then just to get shot by a German.
blown to pieces, Schrader directed Lee to the castle telephone. Reaching the resistance back in Virgo, Lee yelled into the telephone that they were in need of immediate assistance or they would soon be shelled to pieces. Then another round exploded against the castle, and the line went dead. Germans, Frenchmen, and Americans fought for their lives, but ammunition was running low. With Gangle dead and several Wehrmacht soldiers wounded, they were close to being overrun. Lee began pulling the defenders off the walls and deeper into the keep as he saw a squad of Waffen SS close to the gatehouse. Just as they brought a Panzerfaust into position, a sudden rattle of heavy machine guns tore into them. The cavalry had arrived, and just in the nick of time, with the additional firepower of the American tanks, the battle took a decisive turn. The remaining SS troops quickly dispersed into the woods, and the castle was saved. All the French VIPs had survived, thanks to one of the least likely alliances of this or any other war. Marcus Linke, who does a lot of the research for these episodes, and I cannot understand why there is not a major movie about this story. The Last Battle.
It's because nobody would believe it. Everybody in the world would think that it was made up, that they, maybe not that the whole thing was made up, but that they do what movies do and they exaggerate almost everything. I'm sure that's why, or just nobody knows about it. I had no idea. The only thing that I knew about this was that you had some weird mix of Germans and Americans fighting with each other. The whole situation is far more bizarre than that.
Life of the final journey, enemies lead in the past. And it's American troops and the German army joining together at last.
So I understand why you would pick this, but I'm surprised how'd you discover this?
I can't even remember, actually, if I'm honest.
Yeah?
It's just how I think it was an email, a book or something. I remember so clearly, like, reading about it, how I instantly knew that this is a song.
Wow.
And it was such a... Writing the lyrics for the first was amazing fun. Just only writing the music as well. Finally, you can do something that's a little bit more positive, happy,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I mean, I like catchy heavy metal. Every song doesn't have to be super dark.
Yeah.
I like it when it's, opens up a
But
bit.
you guys are fairly bombastic, and it's nice that, no, I'm with you.
And this one is like, the message and the music, and also messing with the fans. We like doing that is in lyrics. We do it every now and then in some of them. For example, in this case, there's Tank called Jenny in the battle.
Yeah.
And of course, we're singing Jenny at the gates as the SS open fire. And if you haven't read anything,
Yeah, you don't.
Jenny at what's this?
So who's she?
Yeah, who's this Jenny girl?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually kind of hilarious. I'm going to have to start going through and seeing where they throw stuff like that in there. But I had thought, like I said, I just had a very general view of American and Germans fighting with each other. And I thought it was more of a, what was the thing, the German that kept the pocket open out of Berlin, like towards the American lines. Golly. I can't think of his name, but I was thinking it was something more like that, where it was like a short time span, quick back and forth, Germans trying to get towards Americans, that sort of thing. Yeah, I did not realize the extent of this whole deal. So the whole thing's just crazy and funny, and the Jenny at the gate thing is funny too.
Who is she? What does she mean to you, Joachim?
Oh, Jenny's my longtime lover.
Did your lady friend watch this?
I hope not.
But it's interesting just that action of the unlikeliest of people to be fighting with each other, because that same year, something we covered in the Time Ghost series, the Indonesian War of Independence, late in 1945, in Indonesia, you had the Japanese and British soldiers fighting together. It was the weirdest thing to read that. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. British and Japanese fighting together. And 1945 was one crazy ass year.
Yep.
And we're talking about it from 75 years later in another crazy ass year.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, this year's not done. We still have an asteroid heading to destroy Earth. We have the wildfires. You're releasing your first solo album on October 16th, if I'm not mistaken.
R&B album?
Yeah, 90s R&B album. It's called And Me, I'm Joachim.
From Sabaton.
See,
We complete each other's sentences.
okay. Anyhow, back to the last battle. So now, how often do you do this one live?
Never did it live.
That's what I was. That was my
Wow.
guess.
Yeah.
But it's funny because we've just been talking about the positivity of in terms of musicality and stuff.
Yeah.
Why have you never done it live?
It never became that popular, actually.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's so weird because you can always guess when you're making an album, is this going to be a popular song or not? This one I thought would.
All right,
So, I mean, on every album, I predict like 2 or 3, that's going to be great.
Yeah.
And I usually have one wrong.
Yeah.
And the other way around. These 2 or 3, even though they're good songs, I don't think the audience or concert-going fans.
You don't think it would be?
would
But you never
like.
tested it out.
No, but we also have statistics on how many, how much it's played on radio and streamed and
Well,
stuff.
who was it that?
And we actually speak to our fans, so we know.
Oh yeah, that's true. Actually, they do, and they have this channel so the fans can speak to them as well.
Yep.
And that reminds me, bringing things around further.
That's bizarre to me because I really like this song. I feel like it's a really good one. So I'm kind of surprised to hear that they haven't performed it live and that it didn't get like a huge reception. I assumed it would too, or that it did. Um, What's really interesting to me about the fact that you can have British and Japanese soldiers fighting together, or German and American soldiers fighting together, is how much propaganda everybody had dealt with over the past, decade, certainly the last like 5 years. And that when push came to shove, they still were able to figure it out, at least to the point of being able to fight together to get through whatever the major obstacle was. Um, you would kind of think that with the amount of propaganda making people think things about the other side, that they wouldn't be able to get past that. They wouldn't be able to do it. So it's kind of interesting to me that in both cases they were able to kind of put everything they thought, all their differences aside, and fight together.
You guys were in the middle of touring Russia when Corona hit and you had to leave the tour.
Yes.
Now, as of today, what is the status on any of your touring or shows for the rest of the year or the beginning of next year?
We are on go until proven wrong, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
We are, which I really like. Our earliest plans is to go back to Russia and finish what we started in November.
Sure. Okay.
And that's something I'm really happy about. And as it looks now, it should be doable. I mean, obviously we're going to follow local laws and regulations. If we won't be allowed to do the tour, we're not going to be dicks and try and force, heavy metal down people's throats.
What about Sabaton Cruise?
Sabaton Cruise, so far so good. We are going to leave a notification on the 19th of October, I think.
Okay.
We'll have the final meeting with Silja, and then we'll see. Because the thing is here, the only thing we can do is prepare to make everything ready so we can do shows.
Yeah.
But as you all realize here, local laws and regulations change on a daily basis.
Yeah, sure.
But the thing is, I don't see it as a big problem. It is a shame if we have to cancel concerts.
Yeah.
But we are gonna make sure everybody gets a refund, or we're gonna reschedule the concerts.
And because we've mentioned it before, and I'll say it again, that on the Sabaton Cruise, if it gets to go this year, that I will do bar piano. I will sit there and sing and play a bunch of Sabaton songs on lounge piano.
I'm looking forward to that.
I know, it's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be great.
That's we should film that actually.
I don't see how we're going to avoid filming it, because everybody's going to be standing there with their cameras. So.
I mean properly with.
Do you hear that, Rickard?
Sometimes
Yes.
with us touring so much.
Yeah.
Not at the moment though, but it's easy to get sort of a little bit tired of it. I mean, it's not like in the middle of a tour, I want to go and karaoke, sing a Sabaton song. That's
Right, yeah, sure.
Obviously.
That'd be
weird.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially in between, I like to do and see different things. And I mean, you playing Sabaton songs on a piano in a very different take.
Yeah.
That is something I would really love to see. And also, I mean, a lot of artists doing covers of us online. I really enjoy watching it. And I mean, I think it's the ultimate. What we need to remember as artists, that even if it's a young person who doesn't have any experience, can barely play their instrument, it is still the sort of the ultimate form of a compliment you can give a musician.
Yeah.
I like your music so much, so I'm not going to write my own. I'm going to perform yours instead.
And I'm going to perform it in front of other people so I can go, yeah? Yeah?
So I love it actually.
But I will say this. Hopefully the Sabaton Cruise will go ahead, and then I will do the piano show, and you will get to see it right here on Sabaton History.
Thank you very much, guys.
American troops and the German army joining together at last.
I'm telling you, I thought the song was a banger. I really liked it, but I don't know. It's like I said, it's way up there for me. So this was a great episode. Truly, truly incredibly crazy, bizarre circumstance and story. It absolutely should be made into a movie. So somebody get on that. Probably Quentin Tarantino. I feel like he has said recently he only has a couple movies left that he wants to do. this should absolutely be one of those. But anyway, as always, like, comment, subscribe. Help me keep building the channel over here. I'll put the Discord link down below, and I'll see you all next time.